Deep, dark, and completely unstoppable, our stories flow like obsidian through the cracks of the human experience. Join us for an intense journey into the heart of drama and cinematic excellence that stays with you. Subscribe now and stay on the cutting edge with us.
Take the keys, I said. Take the whole drawer if you want. I didn't stop them. I didn't argue. I stood in the hallway in my socks at 11:30 at night, and I watched my mother rifle through my purse like it was hers, and I said nothing. Because I already knew what was coming, and I had made sure it wouldn't land on me. Let me back up. I am the older one. I have always been the older one in every way that matters, not just by 4 years, but by expectation, by responsibility, by the invisible tax this family has collected from me since I was old enough to hold a job. My brother is the favorite, has been since the day he was born, and nobody in this house has ever pretended otherwise. My mother calls it, he just needs more support. My father calls it, you're stronger, you can handle it. I call it what it is. I was the one who worked through college without a dime of help from them. I was the one who came home after graduation and paid rent, actual rent, not a token contribution, real money every month, because my father lost his job and my mother didn't want to downsize. I was the one who put off moving out, then put it off again, then again, until I looked up one day and realized I was 29 years old and still sleeping in the same bedroom I had at 14. My brother, Noel. Noel is 25. Noel has never paid a bill in his life. Noel got a car for his 18th birthday, totaled it 9 months later, and got another one the following Christmas. Noel dropped out of 2 colleges, started a pressure washing business that lasted 6 weeks, tried to flip sneakers online, tried dropshipping, tried day trading with money my mother lent him and never asked back. Noel is currently, at 25 years old, unemployed, living rent-free in his old bedroom, and eating food I pay for, because I cover half the groceries every month as part of my contribution to the household. I am not bitter. That is not what this is. I made peace with the imbalance a long time ago, or I thought I did. What I couldn't make peace with was what happened on a Saturday night in March, and what my family expected me to do about it afterward. I had just bought my car 4 months earlier. Saved for 3 years, bought it outright, no loan. A used but immaculate dark gray sedan I found through a private seller who had kept it in a climate-controlled garage like it was a piece of art. I loved that car the way you love something you waited for. I kept it clean. I kept it serviced. I parked it at the far end of every lot so nobody would door ding it. My mother had a car too. My father had bought it for her 2 years prior, a large cream-colored SUV, the kind with 3 rows, bought used but still expensive, still a significant thing. She drove it to church and to Costco and nowhere else mostly. It lived in the driveway. My car lived in the driveway too, side by side. One gray sedan, one cream SUV. Not difficult to tell apart. That Saturday, Noel had been out since noon. I knew he was drinking. I could tell from the texts, the loosening grammar, the way the messages stopped making sense around 8 p.m. and then stopped altogether around 10. I didn't say anything to my parents because I am not his keeper and I am tired of being treated like I am. I had been in my room working. I had a freelance deadline and I was focused, and I was, for once, not thinking about any of them. At 11:15, I heard a car in the driveway, a rideshare dropping Noel off. I heard him come in, heard him trip over something near the door, heard my mother rush out to him, making sounds like he was a wounded animal. I turned back to my screen. Not my problem. 20 minutes later, I heard Noel's voice go loud. He wanted his own car. His car, the one my parents had bought him, the second car, the one currently parked in my uncle's place because Noel had gotten a DUI 8 months ago and his license was still suspended. He couldn't get to it, so he decided the next best thing was mine. I heard my mother's voice. I heard my father's voice. I heard, just let him take it and he'll be fine, and it's just around the block. I got up. I stood in the doorway of the living room and I said, clearly and without raising my voice, that no one was taking my car. That Noel had no license, that if he got behind the wheel and something happened, my insurance would not cover it, and more importantly, someone could get hurt. My mother looked at me the way she sometimes does, like I am an inconvenient that has learned to speak. She said I was being dramatic. My father said Noel just needed to sleep it off somewhere else. There was some situation with his friends I didn't fully catch, and they just needed him to have a way to get there. I said call him another rideshare. They said it was too expensive. I said I would pay for it. They said that wasn't the point. I went back to my room. I locked the door. I sat on my bed and I thought for approximately 45 seconds. Then I went to my window, which faces the driveway. Both cars were there. My gray sedan near the garage door. My mother's cream SUV closer to the street. I pulled up the app on my phone. I have a GPS tracker on my car, a small magnetic one I stuck to the undercarriage when I bought it, because I have always been the kind of person who plans for the possibility that the people around me will not respect what is mine. I opened the app and I checked the location. My car was exactly where I had parked it. I listened. At 11:40 I heard my mother's footsteps in the hall. I heard her stop outside my door. I heard the particular silence of someone deciding not to knock. Then I heard her moving away, toward the kitchen, and I heard the junk drawer, the one by the stove, open and close. I have a spare key to my car. It lives in the junk drawer. Has since I moved back in, just in case, just for emergencies. I had forgotten about it until that moment. I went to my window. I watched my mother come out the side door with Noel, one hand on his arm. He was unsteady. She was guiding him. She walked him to the driveway and she pointed him toward the cars, and in the dark, with the porch light on, you could see everything clearly if you were paying attention. The problem for them was that my spare key is on a plain ring with no fob, no remote start, just a cut metal key. It works on my car. It does not work on my mother's SUV. Her SUV uses a smart key, a push-button ignition, a separate fob she keeps on her own keyring. But my mother's car was unlocked. She almost never locks it in the driveway. Old habit, or inattention, or just the particular carelessness of someone who has never had anything taken from them. Because there was always someone else around to prevent it. I watched Noel try the key on my car. It went in. The door unlocked. I watched him get in, and I watched him try to start it, and I watched the whole thing play out exactly as I knew it would, because I had drained my car battery that evening. Not fully, not permanently. I had left the interior lights on for 4 hours while I was working, quietly, deliberately, after I saw the first signs of where the night was heading. Dead enough that the car would not turn over. I watched Noel get out of my car. I watched him stand in the driveway for a moment. I watched him look at my mother's SUV. I watched him get in. She had left her smart fob in the center console. She does this. I know this because I have borrowed her car twice in the past year, with permission, and both times the fob was sitting right there in the little tray between the seats. I watched the SUV's lights come on. I went back to my bed. I opened the GPS app. I watched my car's location stay exactly where it was supposed to be. I picked up my phone. I dialed non-emergency police. I told them calmly that my brother, suspended license, visibly intoxicated, had just taken my mother's vehicle without permission, and I had watched him pull out of the driveway heading east on our street. I gave them the make, model, color, and plate number, which I had photographed when she first got the car, because I am the kind of person who does things like that. The dispatcher asked if I wanted to report it as stolen. I said I was not sure if my mother had given him permission. I said I was just reporting a concern, a suspended driver, possibly impaired. The dispatcher said they would send someone to look. I went back to my window. I watched the street. I did not have to wait long. The sound came 14 minutes later. Not a crash exactly, more of a sustained crunching followed by an alarm. Not close, but not far. Maybe 6 or 7 blocks. I looked at my phone. No new messages from Noel. No messages from my mother, who I assumed had watched the SUV pull out and was either asleep already or had decided not to think too hard about what she had just helped set in motion. I waited. At 1:17 in the morning, my mother knocked on my door. Hard. The kind of knock that isn't really asking. I opened it. She was still in her robe. Her face had the particular expression she gets when something has happened that doesn't fit the story she tells herself about our family, a kind of frozen blankness, like a loading screen. She told me there had been an accident. She told me Noel had been taken to the hospital, that he was okay, bumps and a laceration on his chin, nothing serious. She told me the car was totaled. Then she told me I needed to call my insurance and report it as my car. I asked her to repeat that. She said it again. She said the insurance would cover it better under my policy. She had looked it up. And since Noelle had technically taken the wrong car and my insurance was more comprehensive, I should say it was my vehicle. She said it was just paperwork. She said family takes care of each other. I looked at her for a moment. I thought about 29 years. I thought about rent paid and groceries bought and deadlines met and opportunities deferred and a father who once said I was stronger and meant it as an excuse, not a compliment. I said no. She said I was being selfish. I said the car that was totaled was her car, registered in her name under her insurance, and that I had already spoken to the police when I called in the concern about a suspended intoxicated driver and that there was a record of that call. Her face changed. I said that I loved Noel and I was relieved he was physically okay and that I hoped this was the thing that finally made something shift for him. I said I was not going to commit insurance fraud. I said that if she wanted to be angry at someone, she should think about who handed a drunk, 25-year-old with no license the opportunity to get behind the wheel of a vehicle. She left my doorway without another word. The next 3 days were the kind of quiet that has weight to it. My father barely spoke to me. My mother moved through the house like I was furniture she was choosing not to look at. Noel came home from the hospital with a bandaged chin and spent 2 days in his room, and on the third day sat across from me at the kitchen table while I was eating lunch and said, quietly, that he knew it had been her car, that he had figured it out. Somewhere in the middle of it. He said he was sorry, not to me specifically, just generally, and to the table. I don't know what to do with that kind of sorry. I accepted it anyway. My mother's insurance paid out, minus depreciation. The settlement was less than she expected. She is currently without a vehicle, and my father has started dropping her off at church in his truck, which she considers beneath her, and I know this because she told me so in a tone that implied it was somehow also my fault. I did not point out that her car would still exist if she had called a rideshare. The cost would have been $12. What I keep coming back to is not the car, and not the insurance, and not even the look on her face when she realized I had made the call. What I keep coming back to is the moment she stood in my doorway and asked me to lie for the people who had just stolen from me. Not metaphorically, literally. She had taken my spare key from my drawer and used it to help my brother take what was mine. That the plan failed because he ended up in the wrong car doesn't change the intention, and she asked me to clean it up. I am done cleaning things up. I moved out 6 weeks later. I'd been saving for a deposit for 2 years but kept delaying because there was always a reason not to go. Always a reason I was needed. Always some version of just a little longer. I stopped waiting for a reason that felt good enough. I signed a lease on an apartment 20 minutes away. I loaded my car, the one with the replaced battery and the GPS tracker still stuck to the undercarriage, and I drove to my new place. And I sat in my empty living room on the floor and I ate takeout straight from the container, and I didn't feel guilty. My mother texted me 3 weeks after I moved out. She said she missed me. She said the house felt different without me. She asked if I wanted to come for Sunday dinner. I thought about what to say for a long time. Long enough that I missed a whole episode of whatever I was watching. Then I typed, I need a little more time. Not because I was punishing her, not as a tactic. Just because I was true. I did need more time. I needed time to stop waking up in the night with that tight preemptive dread of what the next ask would be. I needed time to eat a meal without calculating whether I had already contributed enough this month to be allowed to just exist quietly. I needed time to remember what it felt like to be a person and not a resource. I am still working on that part. But I sleep better now. And my car is in a covered parking spot all to itself, and I lock it every single night, and the GPS tracker is still there, and sometimes I check it for no reason at all, just to see the little dot sitting still in exactly the place I left it. It's a small thing, but it's mine. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from working too hard. It comes from being the person who always absorbs the consequences of other people's choices. I know that exhaustion. I lived in it for years, in a bedroom I'd outgrown, in a house that treated my stability like a shared resource anyone could draw from whenever they needed it. What I've come to understand is that the night everything fell apart wasn't actually the night my brother drove my mother's car into something immovable. That was just the night the imbalance finally became impossible to ignore. The real collapse had been happening slowly, invisibly, across years of small moments. Every time I paid without being asked. Every time I stayed when I wanted to leave, every time I swallowed the words I should have said, because keeping the peace felt like my responsibility and no one else's. The thing about doing the right thing quietly, consistently, over a long period of time is that it rarely gets noticed until something goes wrong. I kept records, I kept receipts. I kept a GPS tracker on a car I owned outright because some part of me understood, even before I could articulate it, that I was surrounded by people who didn't see my things, or my time, or my effort as truly mine. That wasn't cynicism, that was clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is one of the most practical tools a person can have. I am not proud of every choice I made that night. I made some of them coldly, deliberately, with full knowledge of where they would lead. But I am proud that I didn't lie. My mother stood in my doorway and asked me to sign my name to something that wasn't true, and I said no. Not dramatically, not with a speech. Just no. That no cost me something. 3 days of loaded silence. A father who wouldn't meet my eyes. A mother who moved around me like I was a stranger. It cost me and I paid it, and I am still here. What I've kept thinking about since is how different things might have looked if I had just handed over what they asked for. If I'd called the insurance company and told a story that wasn't mine, it would have been easier in that immediate, short-term way that bad decisions often are. But I would have taught everyone in that house, including myself, that my discomfort has no floor. That there is no ask large enough for me to say enough. There's a version of strength that looks like sacrifice. I mistook it for virtue for a long time. Real strength, I think, is knowing which battles are yours to absorb and which ones you have to let land where they belong. Noelle made choices that night. My mother made choices. I made mine, and mine were documented, time-stamped, and reported to a dispatcher before the SUV had even cleared the end of the street. I am not a hard person. I don't think of myself that way. But I am done being soft in the places that cost only me. The apartment is quiet at night. I lock my car. I sleep. That's enough.